Corey Farr here, and I just released my new single, Color Notes. Just came out today, and I know it's kind of against the spirit of art or of music to actually explain the lyrics or what they mean, kind of defeats the purpose sometimes. But I wanted to make a little video explaining the song, talking about it, about the lyrics, and even about the music, because this is a song with a message, and I think it is one that is very needed. So I'll try to keep this short, but basically the title of the song, Color Notes. Color notes are what we call notes, usually in jazz or in other styles of music. They're notes that don't technically fit in the key of the song. They shouldn't fit, technically speaking, and yet they are what adds color, they're what adds flavor, they're what makes jazz music so great, so tasty, you know? And I just love jazz. I know some people don't, but the idea of this song being that all different types of people, and so we're going to use colors as that metaphor. Everyone has something to add, or as one line in the song says, we're all part of one big symphony, which is a phrase that I've come to really like in my writing. And so the idea that all of the colors have something to add. And so even when I was writing the music, the hook there with the harmonics part, the part that kind of sounds like a harp, shows up several times with the choir behind it, or it's actually all my voice, but with the loud harmonies behind it. Even that, to me, I wrote that intentionally. It felt very colorful. It felt very rich. And so even both the voices and then the harmonic notes working together kind of stressed the idea of the title of that song. And so let's go through the lyrics here just quickly. The first verse is a little bit nonsensical, I'll admit. It just kind of sets the tone for the song. I don't want to sing the blues. I don't want to be so heavy. Honestly, I think Yellow has got a better melody. Nothing really hidden there in the message, just kind of it's the first verse I wrote, and before I realized I wanted this song to have a really strong message. The second verse, though, is where it starts to get a little bit, maybe even political. Some of us whisper green, the planetary prophesiers. This is obviously referring to environmentalists and those who would warn us about what is happening to the environment and the impact we are having on it. And then some of us shout in crimson, proclaiming "Set the swamp on fire." This actually is a reference to the most common association with red in American culture right now, which would be Republicans, who a few years ago, if you remember, Donald Trump, one of his slogans was burn the swamp, or drain the swamp, not burn the swamp, drain the swamp. And so draining the political establishment of corruption. And so I kind of played with that here. I talked about set the swamp on fire, clearly referring to that slogan, but then also it's a little bit of a play on words, because it's in contrast to the planetary prophesiers. The ones who shout in crimson or in red are saying set the swamp on fire. Poking a little bit of fun, don't want to be too controversial, but generally the ones most opposed to environmental regulations and stuff do tend to come from the right. And so capturing that tension, that honestly I believe both sides have a voice to add. The climate control is needed to be, we need to hear those voices, but also I think we need to hear the voices of the ones who are saying drain the swamp. Now, we may not agree on what exactly that looks like, but we can all agree, I think, that there's corruption and problems in the government, not just in the US, all around the world as well. The third verse, and I'll get to the chorus in a minute, the third verse says, the kings and queens chanting purple, and the baritone brown-colored choir. In all of their pride and purpose, they give me something to admire. And so this brings in the kings and queens chanting purple, is a reference to the LGBTQ plus community. Purple being traditionally associated with that, as the gay color, and kings and queens kind of referring to yes, queen, and just the purple being associated with royalty, and so using kings and queens that way, but also how the term queen can tend to be used in that community. And the chanting, of course, having to do with the gay pride parades. And then the baritone brown-colored choir, referring to the African-American community, often, frequently associated, and as I have experienced with fantastic choirs and fantastic bands. And just thinking particularly of one of my friends who is a baritone when I wrote this song. He popped into my mind. And so for both of them, it says, in all of their pride and purpose, they give me something to admire. So both the word pride being both used by the LGBTQ plus community and the African American community, talking about Black pride and gay pride, referring to that. And whether you agree or not with Black Lives Matter, whether you agree or not with the so-called gay agenda, there is something to be recognized, that there's a lot of beauty in the spirit behind these movements, that there is something to admire in the pride and in the purpose. Okay, and so again, I think that those colors, those voices, have something to add, as all of us do. And so that's what the chorus is getting at, is that colored notes are painted all over town, but people, they want to keep their eyes to the ground. Okay, we just want to live in our echo chambers on social media or whatever. We just want to hear voices that already agree with us. The next line, colored notes in a world black and white. This world is so polarized right now. Everything is black and white, yes and no. You could be just one word, one wrong use of a phrase can get you painted on one side or the other. You could be the most conservative person out there, but if you start talking about racial reconciliation, many people will label you as a quote-unquote liberal. Or on the other hand, you could be a staunch Democrat, very, very left, but if you start talking about gun rights or something like that, that we pick a phrase, there's so many of them, then you can be immediately labeled as a far right, extremist. And so this idea of the world black and white, we need some more color, because as the last line says, every color is part of the light. And those of us remember from middle school science, white light is actually made up of all of the colors, as we can see when we look through a prism. And then the bridge, talking about heaven, this is kind of the idealism. The first line, heaven isn't red and it isn't blue and it isn't white. So red and blue, of course, referring to the two parties in that very polarized system that we live in, Republican, Democrat. Heaven is not represented by either of those parties. And heaven isn't white, kind of commenting on the current race situation in America. I know there are many different opinions of what's going on, but the bottom line is that heaven is not going to be, or the ideal life should not be mandated by the norms of white culture. Nor should it be mandated by the norms of Black culture or Chinese culture or African culture or Canadian culture. Heaven is something that will have all of those voices singing together. And I'm not just talking about the afterlife here, but really the ideal society, the ideal, God's vision for humanity. The second line, heaven isn't green, it isn't gold, and it isn't mine. This is kind of getting at envy. Green, of course, referring to money, gold being a more obvious reference to treasure, and it isn't mine. So many of us like to think that the ideal society, or that heaven is either that heaven or ideal life can be bought with money, that it can be earned by accumulating possessions, or that it can be defined based on the way we want to define it. But it is not green, it is not gold, and it is not mine. And then the last line, we really got to see that we're all part of one big symphony. And I love that phrase, that we are part of one big symphony. And so that's where the notes of the colored notes comes in. And so throughout this song, you have the color notes playing together. You have, of course, the colors, and then the colored notes having some references to music throughout the song. So anyway, I just wanted to do a little explanation, because just for my own sanity, I'm putting this song out there, and I wanted to know that I'm at least also putting out a way for people to maybe hear a little bit more of the message that was in my heart as I wrote this song. So anyway, I hope you enjoy this song, and please share it with your friends. You can go ahead and listen to the song with the link in the description to this video. I have it both as a YouTube video, and then it will be available, or it is available on Spotify and Apple Music and every place you can buy music online or listen to music online. So anyway, thank you so much for listening. I hope you're still with me. Obviously, you're still with me if you're hearing this, and I appreciate your time. And yes, just remember, we're all part of one big symphony. So everyone, I love you all. Grace and peace.